Beauty that made this heart adore you. Hope of a life spent with you. Here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful.
I'm very glad to meet you once again. Pam and we came here last Friday, and next Friday we're flying off to Chiang Mai for a mission forum about the middle of April. I also got to visit you at Cham Beach Bible Camp, but couldn't join in the congregation on Sunday here at this church. But I've been listening to all the news. Last month, Caleb, my son, came here, and he was actually reporting, sending me photos, telling me about how this church here is going. And Pam and we miss you so much, and we're glad to see you once again. I got to meet 2 new friends.
First time, welcome. นอกนั้นก็ไม่ใช่ว่าหน้าเก่าๆนะครับแต่ว่าหน้าแก่ๆยอมรับ
It's not that all are old faces, and I do admit that I am quite an old face here too. And I was asked, Kun Larry, how many grandchildren do you have now? So I answered, I have 4 grandchildren.
ลูกเป็นคนหลานเป็นคนไม่มีย่างก็รออยู่
But actually those are just puppies. So I do not have any grandchildren yet.
ผู้รับใช้ทางคริสตจักรคุณปีก็ดีคุณหนึ่งก็ดีเขาก็เล่าให้ฟังว่าเดือนกันยายน
When I get to talk to some of the preachers here, they told me that in September, this church is arranging a Bible competition about King David. And I think the story of King David is quite an interesting one. He is quite a famous king of Israel. He has a lot of influence over Israel. And he has quite a good name until the time of Jesus Christ. When people are waiting for the Messiah, before Jesus Christ comes, they were talking about someone who is coming like David, ruling just like King David. So David's life is quite a distinct one. So if we would have a chance to study about his life, the story of his life, and have this Bible competition, I think it is quite interesting. So sad that we'll not have the Bible verse projected up here, but let's just do it the old way by turning your Bible. 1 Samuel 16. When we come back to talk about the life of King David, it's true that he has grown up to become someone with a lot of influence. He has a lot of responsibilities. He has created many things. But he did not come and then just in a flash, waking up and then one day he becomes a king. It is not that he was born and having that responsibility, not that he was born and be filled with all the abilities, capabilities of becoming a king. To me, as a father, I try to teach my kids to be responsible for something. I begin with a small thing. Could be asking them to clean up their rooms. Or sometimes I make them responsible for feeding our pet. When they were growing up, I give them some money so that they are responsible for that amount of money. They could manage that money so that they would know how to spend responsibly. So everything goes step by step, growing up, before until one day when they become mature. Similar to King David's life, if you read from 1 Samuel 16, if we're to look in verse 11. So actually, if we are to project it there, then we would get to read it together. But if we were to read from verse 11, if you still remember the story, Samuel goes to Jesse's house. God let him know that there will be a king born from Jesse. So when he goes and visits that house, he was checking out all the sons from the firstborn. And Jesse said, these are all my sons. So Samuel was asking that, are all these all the sons you have? There is still the youngest. Jesse answered, he is tending the sheep. But he might not be important. He is tending the sheep right now. He's my youngest son. Well, that's actually true. He was the youngest. He was just a small kid. But taking care of the sheep in the field, isn't that a certain level of responsibility? It may not be a big deal, but it is something. So he gives this responsibility to David to take care of the flock. I had a chance to worship at the church that Kun Suagrai, who was the previous church member here, was the leader there at that church. I remember he was studying at the Bible school here. He told us the story when he was young, that he was tending the buffalo in the countryside of Thailand. So that means that his father is giving him a certain responsibility so that he takes care of the buffalo. I don't know if there are any differences between tending the sheep and tending the buffalo, but if we were to check carefully, when he was taking care of the sheep, you'll see that there is a lion, there is a bear that is coming to the flock. And then David was fighting back with the bear and the lion. So it may not be as easy as we think it would be. But David was trained, even though he was still young. But he has this responsibility. Then in chapter 17, sorry, 1 Samuel 16, verse 23. When Saul was a king of Israel, there was a evil spirit tormenting Saul that God let happen. I don't know what it was like. What we know is that Saul did not feel very well. He feels stressed. So to relieve himself out of that stress, he was asking David to play his lyre for him. Do you like listening to the music? I know that when I was going home, and when there were some students from the university is going to join in dinner, she was cooking and she was stressed out. She's trying to cook Thai food, so she was stressed out to cook that. So she would tell me to turn on some songs. We would play some CDs to relieve her out of that stress. She could cook in time. It tastes very good. Everybody feels happy. In King Saul's life, When David was taking care of the sheep, when he was brought into the palace, that was not much responsibility that he has to work on. But we see from the scripture that he has to play the lyre to make Saul feel better. Many times Saul got angry or getting jealous. He would try to kill David. But no matter what happens, he is able to fulfill that small responsibility that was assigned to him. Then it's famous of. When we said David and, what is the first word that comes to mind? David and Goliath. Goliath is a soldier, is an enemy. And David killed that enemy. Goliath was threatening the Israel and was defaming Jehovah with bad words. David got angry hearing that. Even though he was just young, but he went out to fight. And I think you know what happens afterwards. On how he killed that giant. 1 Samuel chapter 17 verse 45. David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." When David was fighting back, he came out in the name of the Lord Almighty. He knows that his capability, he knows that to be victorious over his enemy is not dependent upon his own capabilities, but to win is through the Lord Almighty, in the name of the Lord Almighty. This morning we sang the song, "As the Deer Pants for Our God." Do you know who wrote this lyric? This person, this very person, David. David who thirsts for God, for the Lord. Like a deer pants for the water, he would like to get closer. He would like to have a relationship with God. So when he had a chance to fight his enemy, he fought in the name and the power of the Lord, whom David loves. First he got to tend the sheep, then he got into the palace. He takes care of the king. Then he takes larger responsibility in an army. He became a soldier, became more famous in the war. He is good. But what I would like you to focus this morning appears in chapter 22. First Samuel chapter 22 verse 1 and 2. David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and his father's household heard about it, they went down to him there. All those who were in distress or in debt or discontented gathered around him, and he became their commander. About 400 men were with him. Thank you. These two verses, when I read these two verses, I was impressed but also surprised. David, as I said, Saul wants to kill David, so David fled. He was escaping, and he was living in a cave. I don't know if a cave is safe enough, but he was hiding in the cave, running away from Saul, trying to find a safe place. So when news spread out that David was there are many people coming to David. People who are taking side with him. People who like him came to him. But if we were to notice in verse 2, those who came to David, about 400 men, what are they like? In verse 2, all those who were they? All those who were in distress. In distress. What kind of distress did the Bible tell us? We know that they're in distress. We don't know what their problems are. But if I were to ask if there are anybody in this room are in distress, Pam was raising her hand. I do believe that many of us, we're in distress. We have life problems. Secondly, or in debt. What kind of debt did the Bible tell us? Why would they borrow the money? Or do they buy the lottery? Do they want to buy a plot of land? Getting some loan? I don't know the details, but we know what was recorded as saying that they are in debt. They couldn't fix these problems, so they came to David. In this room, anybody are in debt? I think Pam would also raise her hands again. One, people who were in distress. Two, they're in debt. Or three, discontented. Discontented.
In distress. In distress แปลว่ายังไงคือวิจิตรา in distress แปลว่ายังไงไม่ทราบ in distress
And in the English version, there are some certain words that the Bible is using, such as in distress. With the kings, with the boss, with the family, we do not know. But they're trying to find a person that they could rely on. Did David invite these people? Just as we read, I don't think that David is trying to set up a campaign for an election. If you have any problems, come to me, I'll fix it. But I don't see that written down that way, and based on the scenario, I don't think that's what happens, but it seems that people are coming to David. David did not call them. He is like a magnet, drawing people closer to him, someone who are having problems, are trying to seek for help. Who would care about our problems? Who would be responsible for our problems? I don't know. It turns out that David becomes that person. He may not know what happened. He did not live with each of these people, but when they have problems, David is keen on helping them, and he became their commander. When we read from these verses, when he began from such a minor, small responsibility, then the responsibility grows larger and larger as he grows older. And in this verse, 400, and afterwards, if we were to read along, we'll see that he grows up more and more until he becomes a king. That means his responsibility is getting larger to be the overall, all the Israel. What is this story like? Especially in chapter 22, verse 2. Those who are having life problems are coming to David, and David takes them. Is it similar to the story of Jesus Christ? In Matthew 11, verse 28 and 29, Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. The fact that David takes those who are having problems or need or seek help. David takes them in and becomes their commander. In 1 Samuel, it's similar to when Jesus takes those who are weary and burdened in Matthew 11. But the difference is, in the story of David, it seems that those guys are coming to him. He did not invite them. When they come, he'll have to take them into his responsibility. But in the story of Jesus, Jesus invites us, and when we come to him, he takes care of us. Last night, Pam and I joined at Kun Suvisha's house. And I think most of us know him and his wife, Kun Ji. They've become our friends since their younger years. I went there and I saw many brothers and sisters that we used to know when we lived in Thailand. Kun Suvisha invited me. I don't know how many he invited, but when we sat down, there's some omelette, there's some seafood, that is Pam's favorite. We read from the Bible. But when we began to eat, we see that someone would show up at the door, and then he would drag more chairs to the table. When the table is full, we're trying to give them all the seats as much as we have. They're glad in welcoming people to their house. I see that picture that was happening. I think it might be similar to when we see the picture of Jesus Christ, when Jesus invites us and we go to him. Or even though we're not invited, we wanted to go. We wanted to go to him. We have many food available. We have all the seats. Go out and bring more people in to join in at his table. I was comparing with my life, and Pam and I talked about this last night. That in our life, what can we do to have an open heart of welcoming more people in our lives? If we are to compare our life with David, what can we do to become a magnet, to draw more and more people to come and see our example? And this morning in the greeting, and I think the story that was shared is right, because Christian life, living a life as an example, is actually the factor that can bring more and more people to get to know our Lord. So if we could show the manner as Jesus Christ, welcoming those who may have problems. Jesus takes us in. We have our own issues. Therefore, we should be doing the same as Jesus Christ, welcoming others, and we know that they surely will have their own issues. Can we become a magnet to bring more people to know God? David did not use his own goodness or his own power to draw more and more people in, but he was using the power of the Lord. And for us, if we are going to become a magnet, if we're going to become a representative of our God, to invite more people, don't raise ourselves. Don't raise ourselves up so that we are praised, but let our God be the one to be glorified. Lift up his name. David did that. Jesus Christ did that. We all can do that as well. Be responsible for what we have. There is no need to be responsible for something that is not here yet. But just take care, be responsible of what you can see around us. Whenever you see a chance, seize that. See somebody with problems, go out and help. But glorify our God when you do that, so that He is the one who is glorified. He is the one to be praised, not us. David's life. There are many stories happening in his life, and if we are going to arrange a Bible competition in September about the story of David, surely we'll learn a lot of things. And I was talking to someone, and she said that last night they got to read 1 Samuel and in Kings. I think it is good to study about his life, but do not forget that David is a representative of God. We would like to become more and more like Jesus Christ, be His children. May the Lord be with you.
You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. Beauty that made this heart adore you.